Good evening, everyone. I'm Ashley Billington, and you're watching the fifth quarter, our Friday night wrap-up show where we bring you all the things happening around the Metroplex and the high school sports scene. And basketball is in full swing right now as district races are underway and teams are fighting for those playoff spots. Up first, we have Inside High School Sports Insider Ryan Harris on with us to talk about those district races. So Ryan, another big week of Texas high school hoops and the DFW Metroplex. What are some district races that you were keeping an eye on this week and some of the matchups that you were looking at?
Well, I really am excited to see how District 6 6A plays out. There's pretty much going to be four or five teams that, five teams battling for four spots, but then two or three teams that, really have the potential to make a pretty deep state playoff run. Right now, Flower Mound is 3-1 in district. They are in fourth place, but they're outscoring their opponents by 361 points so far this season. Coppell's second in district. They're 3-1. Their only loss is by one to Louisville, who's in first place. Coppell's outscoring their opponents by 301 points so far this season. All those teams up there at the top are, really good. Of course, Louisville's undefeated in district. They're 3-0. And 14-9 overall. So they've got, the one win at Coppell. They'll get Coppell at home on the back half swing of district play, but that's going to be a really interesting district to keep an eye on because you have so much talent at the top.
Were there any big matchups this week that you've had your eye on that you were interested in for a certain reason?
Well, just again, any matchup in that district between any of the top teams, and then matchups in 7-6A as well. 7-6A's got Grand Prairie and South Grand Prairie. So Grand Prairie already beat South Grand Prairie once, and they'll play one more time. But then you've also got Waxahachie, Mansfield, Cedar Hill, and DeSoto all in that same district. And you kind of look at it, you're like, man, when was the last time DeSoto missed the playoffs? Are they going to miss the playoffs this year? Because they're 1-3 in district right now. They're behind Cedar Hill and Mansfield, who are both 2-2. South Grand Prairie's 3-1 with the one loss to Grand Prairie, and then Grand Prairie and Waxahachie are both 4-0. Grand Prairie's 16-1, and Waxahachie's 21-3. So they're it's another top-heavy district, but this one, as opposed to 6-6A, it has a little bit more depth, where you got that meat in the middle, like teams like Mansfield and Cedar Hill and DeSoto, and then you have Lake Ridge and Summit to round it out. But that district is really deep. They've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of good teams, teams that would be really competitive. There are competitive in their district, but, maybe be at the top of some other districts. So I'm interested to see how that one plays out as well.
And how big of a surprise has Grand Prairie and Waxahachie been in that 7-6A district? I mean, you touched on their record just a minute ago, but when Grand Prairie beat South Grand Prairie, everyone's eyes got really wide and said, holy moly, we weren't expecting this. Waxahachie pretty much has done the same so far, as you just had recognized their record. But how big of a surprise have those teams actually been to the Metroplex?
Yeah, well, I talked about that a few weeks ago, where there was so much talent in the Metroplex last year, and this year it's a little bit more spread out. There's a lot of guys that can just hoop. There's not necessarily the 5-star Tyrese Maxey going to Kentucky type guys. There's not as many of those. But it's just a really deep class. There's a lot of good underclassmen that are playing heavy minutes for certain teams. But I talked about how we might see some teams that aren't traditional powerhouses that nobody was looking at the start of the season that might just, start piling up some wins and starting to take people by surprise. And when you look at Grand Prairie's record, Waxahachie's record, those two teams have 4 combined losses. Denton Geyer, obviously they're, one of the better, programs in the area, but LD Bell, they're 15-3. Those are all teams. Louisville, who, they have Keontae George. They've got a lot of guys that can hoop. Coppell, who only has 3 losses. A lot of those schools are like the teams that, you kind of kept an eye on, saying, now that they're, we're this far into the season and they're still not losing basketball games very often. You say we need to keep an eye on this team for the rest of the season and throughout the playoffs, because they might end up taking everybody by surprise in March.
And this is definitely a year of the non team, or the teams that are not the ones that you would normally say, oh, that team's the best of the best. I mean, we've got the ones like Duncanville and you've got Denton Guyer and those schools, but there's also those ones giving them a run for their money. We're going to switch topics a little bit, as you and I discussed last week about the girls and how many of the top team or the top tier girls players are out right now with injury, most specifically ACL injuries, as Samaya Smith of DeSoto went down last week with another ACL injury. That's almost 5 or I think maybe 6 girls in DFW. Now that we've had a little bit more time to let that sink in and let those numbers sink in and look in on them, what are your thoughts now on this whole situation?
Well, it's, you've got, if you put together a lineup of Jordan Merritt, Harmony Turner, Jayla Brooks, and Samaya Smith, and then you could throw Sarah Andrews in there, who has a strained ACL. I mean, I don't think there's any team in the nation that's going to beat that lineup of 5. They'd be competitive in college because they have so much talent. So, and those are just the girls in the area that have ACL injuries. So, I mean, first off, it speaks to the depth and the talent on the girls' side, but it is troubling because, I mean, it really, how often do you have that much talent, in one area where there's so many talented players that are the best of their class? Obviously, 3 of those girls are 5-star recruits. And then Samaya Smith is a 4-star recruit. So my
And she's
point
only
in
a
saying that
junior on
is,
top of that.
yeah, and it's like, you'll hope you get her healthy next year, but for some of these girls, and it's like with all the talent in the area this year, it's like how many other classes do you get that are that talented? And then obviously you have some talented juniors just with the air, because obviously, some of those girls that are seniors are going to leave. They won't be around next year. And then we'll still have, plenty of talent in the class below. But, you really kind of feel robbed that you didn't get to watch all these girls go head to head throughout the season and in the playoffs because they lost their year to ACL injuries.
So, what are your closing thoughts from this week of Texas high school basketball?
It, district play is in full swing. This is the most important time of the year. Getting off to a good start in district is really key to making the playoffs, because when you look down in your records, 1-5 in district play, you start feeling the pressure where, you got to win, 3, 4, 5 in a row. You got to say, look, we can't lose another game for another 2 or 3 weeks if we want to make the playoffs when you have that kind of a record. So getting off to at least a 500 start is going to be key. And that's also when you sort of get to have a feel for the other teams in your district. Who have they played? Who have they beat? Who have they lost to? What do the standings look like right now? And that's when it's about this time of year where you can kind of map out every team's road to the playoffs. And then, of course, obviously there are the teams like Duncanville and Denton Guyer that don't really need that roadmap to the playoffs. They're going to be there, but you figure out who the best teams in that district are, and you say, I want to get out and watch them when they have to play, the second or third or fourth best team in their district to see how they respond, because that'll kind of give you a good feel of who's going to be most equipped to go on a deep playoff run in a March. Because once you get so far into the playoffs, everybody's good. Everybody has depth. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how some of these district races play out, especially like I mentioned in 6 and 7, 6A next week.
Ryan, thanks so much for joining us on the Fifth Quarter. We'll be right back after these messages.
Don't forget to catch our extended coverage of the high school football season each week on The Warm-Up, presented by your local North Texas Geico agents. We will get you ready for all the action this Thursday on all our social media outlets. Watch Inside High School Sports to catch this week's MVP, brought to you by GiveMeTheVin.com. These MVP athletes make it look easy, just like GiveMeTheVin.com makes it easy to sell your car.
Allen had a huge win earlier this week, and we caught up with one of the players after the game to talk about their great performance.
Just talk about this win. You guys had a 4-point lead at halftime, but you seemed to drive to no end in the second half.
Oh, yeah.
That was the game plan with the second half?
Yeah, we practiced a lot about spacing, just creating space within the open court because, they're going to guard up hard. So our game plan was, space them out and find mismatches that we could, get easy buckets on. And so we were able to do that, effectively and efficiently. So we were able to get constant buckets inside or dump outs to our big man. And but it really started on the defensive end because they're a really good team, really good shooters, and we just had to stay solid. And we were able to get deflections and open dunks and layups.
I was going to say, you talked about them being a good team. This is a tight spot at the top of 9-6-8, and you guys getting a road win. How big is that to get a road win?
It's super big. I mean, we're taking it one game at a time. Our ultimate goal is state championship, but at the same time, it's being district champions outright. Last year, we were tied with Jesuit for outright district champions, and I feel like we're taking a lot more pride into that and taking it a lot more serious. And so this is a big, big win. I mean, we got the driver's seat, and we're ready for the next team coming at us. So.
Congrats on all the success you guys are having. Up next, we have producer of Wingstop Inside High School Sports, Ward Fazzold, the Wizard, on with us to talk about what's coming up tomorrow on the show.
The Inside Story is driven by your North Texas Honda dealers. Right now, they can help you get great deals on award-winning Hondas. It's their job to be helpful, so stop by your local helpful Honda dealer today.
We've got another great episode of Wingstop Inside High School Sports on tomorrow on NBC5. And in this segment, we're going to talk to producer Ward Fazzold about what will be coming on the show for you guys to see. Yo, Wizard, what's up? How are your games tonight? You went to some good ones.
Actually, I did go to some good ones. The best one of the night, and I'm challenge anybody to find a better one, the Metroplex was third-ranked Waxahachie was playing at Grand Prairie, who's made their way up the rankings to 12th. And it's a great atmosphere. I tell you what, it's great to see Grand Prairie relevant again in basketball, and that gets a lot of credit to Barron Brown, the ex-Lancaster star. He's really turned that program around, and he brought this kid back named Jalen Posey, who was scheduled. He was zoned to go to Grand Prairie, but he went to a private school instead. An academy, I should say, maybe not a private school, and he came back this year just to play for Brown. And I tell you what, he made the shot of the night. It was tied at 60, 9 seconds left, and for some reason the Indian defense, spread the part of the Red Sea there for him and let him go all the way in for a wide open layup to win it 62-60. He scored 24 on the night. DJ Nolan for Waxahachie scored 19, but he fouled out with 3 minutes to play, and I think they could have used him down the stretch. The Indians had one last chance to score. Actually, it wasn't at the buzzer. It was with 3 seconds left. They had one last chance, and they kind of fumbled it out of bounds. They were trying to run a play. It didn't work out. Another impressive win for Grand Prairie, 62-60. They beat state-ranked South Grand Prairie last week. They are doing things, and they are going to be noticed. Whether you want to notice them or not, they will be noticed.
They will
I think they only
not
got the
go
one loss
down.
this year. Exactly. Then I was also at Irving MacArthur because I wanted to see the return of Sarah Andrews. She's
And how
back
did
in the
that go
lineup
tonight?
after she got limited minutes. She just coming back. It's her first game back from an ACL tear, and so she got very limited minutes. We were there for the first half, and I think she got a couple assists. She didn't shoot, but one time. Hannah Gusters played very well. She scored like 8 in the first half. And if y'all remember Lauren Cox from Flower Mound, she's a little sister that is now a freshman, just about the same size. And she did very well for Flower Mound in the first half. They were down by 7 in the first half. I found out they lost in overtime. MacArthur won that game 57-54 in overtime. And this is everybody's played everybody once now in girls basketball. So we're about ready to start round 2, and this is where the noise really happens. You start fighting for your playoff spots as everybody starts to play each other a second time.
So I actually had a conversation with Ryan about how if you were to take all of the girls who are out with ACL injuries, you could have almost a top 5 team in not only Texas but almost the country, with how
in the
many
nation.
5-star and 4-star athletes in DFW that are out with ACL tears and or hurt at the moment.
Absolutely. You have the whole McDonald's All-Star team. And I wanted to talk, at the game was Irving MacArthur graduate Alexa Jones. She is in the WNBA now. I'm not sure what team she plays for, but she came back to check out her old squad, and I would have loved to sit down and talk to her about why she thinks these things are happening and what's going on. But she was very busy talking to others.
So, Ward, what else will be on Wingstop Inside High School Sports this week?
Well, this week, thank God we're back on at 6:30 on Saturday, so we'll be back on tomorrow night. You're going to see a nasty dunk from Mike Miles. If you haven't seen it on Twitter already, you'll see it in the show. He did it on Tuesday against Mesquite Boquete. The kid's rough. He likes roughing the rims, and he's a TCU recruit, so I know you love him.
Woohoo! We like our TCU boys.
Absolutely. And we're also going to have our inside stories. We caught up with Chris Owens from He is a Duncanville dunker. Speaking of films, he was a human highlight film every time he went out, and now he's head coach over at Bishop Dunn. So we caught up with him and had a nice talk about his career overseas, playing overseas, and the fact that he's the grand uncle of Jesse Owens, or the grand nephew of Jesse Owens. And just a great guy and a great story. And then our flashback, we're going to take a look back at LaMarcus Aldridge from when he used to play at Seagoville. He is still doing his thing with the Spurs, but at Seagoville, he was under the shadows of Chris Bosh, who played over at Lincoln, but he sized him up the times they played each other face to face. There's some pretty good stuff. And we're going to have a bobblehead that's going out to the old trickster from Colleyville Heritage, Baylor Heb. That guy is fun to watch. You'll see some highlights of his week last week where he scored 76 points in 2 games.
I can't believe it.
Definitely deserving it.
That was an amazing week performance from him.
Yeah, he was something else, and they need it too. That's a tough district. They're in 8-5A. They got Brewer and Birdville, which will have highlights of that game playing. And those 3 teams are battling out at the top. So anytime you can get a 76-point week from your leader, that's always going to go a long way.
So excited to see all of the great game highlights, stories, bobbleheads, and everything else that we'll be giving out tomorrow on Wingstop Inside High School Sports on NBC5 at 6:30 p.m. But until then, I'm Ashley Bullington, and thank you so much for watching the 5th quarter.